What's up, everybody? Well, today I figured I would do a video telling everybody what the 5 most important things are that you're gonna absolutely need if you decide you're gonna move to Montana. Especially after these last couple of days, you're really gonna want to pay attention to this. For those of you that don't know, we reached a low of negative 44 degrees. That was extremely cold, and that's what I was living in. And I've got one of the things in there that's on my list. But I might as well start off with number 1, and that happens to be good quality clothing. Now, I know a lot of people like designer wear and stuff like that, but in all honesty, most designer wear really isn't going to help you out that much. You want good quality clothing. You want wool or alpaca or mohair or something like that, some type of Under Armour, good quality boots, something kind of like what I'm wearing right there, or some kind of winter boot. You can do a Schnee's, you can do a Kenetrek, you can do a Sorel, you can do any type of boot you want, but you're gonna need a good quality pair of boots. Whether they're winter or summer, honestly is up to you, but I recommend both. Me personally, I like Under Armour and merino wool blends, and the rest of the time nylon helps a little bit, and there's a layering system. So you're always going to want to keep that in mind because we get extremely cold here in the winter time. Like I said, it was negative 44 2 nights ago, and it was negative 27 last night. It's currently negative 7 degrees, and in some areas of the state it feels like negative 17. It just depends on if you've got a wind chill or not. So that honestly is the number 1 thing on the list that you are going to need if you consider moving to Montana. Well, the number 2 thing on the list, in case you haven't guessed, when you're going to move to Montana, the most important thing you're going to need is a wood stove, a really good quality wood stove. There are a lot of places that will lose power when you get into super negative temperatures, so you always have to have another way to heat. Propane is good, you can go ahead and go along with that. Natural gas is epic up here, but remember one thing, that when it gets really, really cold, natural gas and propane not only both contribute to high condensation in the area that they're being used in, but there is a potential that it could stop flowing, or you can even run out if you're running propane. And in some areas of the state, if you run out of propane, there's no guarantee that they will be able to get to you to be able to refill your propane tank. So in all honesty, it is just a lot better to go ahead and do it traditionally and have a good quality wood stove. All right. And then also, another thing you got to keep in mind, going back to the whole you can lose power, get yourself a thermal operated fan. Okay, this one has a little solar panel in here, and it heats up with heat on the bottom, cold air on the top, and it creates the power to run the fan. That way you don't have to worry about distributing the heat throughout your house. But I will say right now that with it being as cold as it was over the last couple of days, I don't honestly think anything else would have been able to keep up with keeping my little house that I've got on wheels warm other than this wood stove, because it didn't require any power whatsoever to produce heat. And that's something you really want to keep in mind if you're going to come to Montana. So that makes number 2 on the list. Well, another thing that happens to go hand in hand with cold weather living in Montana, and it just so happens to be the number 3 thing on the list, and that is a block heater. The little itty bitty heating plug you can plug into the engine block and plug power into it so that it'll keep your engine block warm so that your vehicle will start in negative temperatures. There were a lot of people that didn't have the ability to start their cars when it was negative 44, negative 30, negative 20, and that's just the way it is up here. So you've got to anticipate something like that. So the number 3 thing you're going to need when you move to Montana is a block heater. This particular block needs one because it happens to be a 5.9 mechanical Cummins with no preheat cycle because it's a 1993. So if I don't have that block heater plugged into that thing all night, this bus that I live in will not start. Along with this minivan right here, this is the Dodge Grand Caravan, and it will not start either if it is -20 or colder. So you always want to make sure that you have a block heater. Now, there are vehicles out there that you don't need to get block heaters for, but they're usually a lot older. For example, my first generation 93 Jeep Wrangler. This happens to have the 4-cylinder engine in it, and it has started in -35. I even put up a video earlier last year on my channel of me brushing the snow off of the engine itself on a -35 day and starting her up. So every once in a while you do strike gold with certain vehicles, but most vehicles it's better to get a block heater. And then when it comes to a block heater and the cold temperatures and what I said earlier about power possibly going out, it's a real smart thing to get a generator. That way, if your power does go out, you fire up your generator and you plug it into your block heater. Because even though we have cold temperatures and normally a lot more snow than there is right now, schools don't close. They have late starts, but they don't close, and you're still required to get to work. So, for the number 3 most important thing you're gonna need to move to Montana, definitely have a block heater. And that brings me to number 4 on the list. The 4th most important thing you're going to need if you decide to move to the state of Montana. You're gonna need a firearm. Now, you're not gonna need just any firearm. You're gonna need a firearm that packs a punch. If you saw my video of my wife and I hiking out into the middle of the woods to an old mine, you'll understand why. We had a mountain lion that was tracking us, and literally I was about 30 yards from him when he decided to growl at me and run away, okay? Now this right here happens to be the Henry all-weather chambered in 4570, and I have the option to shoot a 430 grain bear load, okay? They're meant for grizzly bears. So you will absolutely need a quality firearm. 4570s, 357s, and 10 millimeters, okay? Anything else really isn't gonna help you very much. So you don't just get any gun, you get the gun that will keep you safe. Especially if you decide you're gonna go hiking off into the mountains or any hiking trails or anywhere that's outside the cities. And in all honesty, with the recent development in Montana, a lot of the wildlife is actually getting closer to the cities. So it's becoming a little bit more frequent for people to come in contact with mountain lions and bears. And yes, you're looking around and you see snow, but in all honesty, none of the bears are actually sleeping this year because it has been abnormally warm and they haven't gone into hibernation because there's been way too much food out for them to get. So when it comes to the 4th most important thing you're gonna need when you move to the state of Montana, it is a good quality firearm that can keep you safe from the wildlife. Other than that, you can use bear spray if you want to, but you do got to remember that bear spray is made out of red pepper. So once you go ahead and spray that bear and that solution dilutes, you just basically rang the dinner bell for all the rest of them. So I still say, get a good quality firearm. Now, with all that being said, that brings me to the 5th most important thing you're gonna need to have if you decide to move to the state of Montana. And that happens to be an adaptable perspective. Now, Montana not only abides by the national constitution, but we also abide by the Montana Constitution, which is set in place to basically preserve the state and the type of living that there is out here. So you have to be able to leave everything that you were in behind and adapt a totally new perspective of life. Because a lot of people in Montana, and trust me, I've been around the state a lot and I've talked to a lot of people, most of them don't want a lot of stuff to change that's going to make it worse, okay? So that's something you got to keep in mind. It's just courteous to move somewhere new, regardless of where you move from and where you move to go ahead and leave where you moved from behind you and adapt where you move to as your new way of life, because after all, that was the entire point of moving. Otherwise, you should have just stayed put where you were at. So, an adaptable perspective is honestly, in my opinion, and a lot of other Montanans' opinions, the number 5 most important thing you will need to have if you decide to move to Montana. So, anyway, I just figured I'd share that with you. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments down below. If you liked anything on the video, leave a like on it. If you're not subscribed, consider hitting that button. If you do, you'll get to see a lot more cool content, including more mines like some of my other videos. Don't forget to share it with a friend, and definitely don't forget your notification bell, because after all, you get to see stuff like this. Because this is where I am currently at. And as you can see, there is nothing in any direction other than me. And that's why I have these lists, because you never know where you're going to end up and what you're going to have to deal with. Ah, man, I love coffee. Well, with all that being said, if you're still considering moving to Montana, I hope that helped you out. In the meantime, you guys take care. I'll see you next time.